Welcome to everybody who's arriving. We're super excited that you're here tonight. I'm Susan Carson. I'm here as a host, but the point of this whole evening is Felicia Murrell and her brand new baby book. Happy book birthday to you, Felicia.
Thank you.
And the restorative power of love in an either or world. And we're going to have a marvelous time for the next 75 minutes or so, hearing pieces of the book, talking about the book, and just celebrating that you have brought this gift into the world for us that is changing and forming all of us. And we're super excited to have Paul Young and Bradley Jersak with us tonight, authors, theologians, speakers, and primarily friends of Felicia. So this is going to be super fun. Felicia, I want to give you a chance to say hi and welcome everybody.
Yeah, I just really want to say um, a huge thank you for particularly the book ambassadors that have journeyed with me these last 6 weeks and sharing things on social media and post and to my book endorsers who wrote early endorsements of the book and to Doug and the kids and just all of the support has, I feel on a cloud of love and support. And it's really meant the world to me to be surrounded and cared for and celebrated and uplifted in that way. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll just say you're welcome for all of us. Thank you for inviting us along on the journey with you. I want to let everybody know as we get started, you're welcome to post your any comments, questions as we go. Hopefully we'll have a chance in a couple minutes to answer a question or two that you might have. And I want to invite you, if you, before midnight tonight, email Felicia at feliciamurrell.com. You will be entered to win either a signed copy of her brand new book or a signed copy of her first book, Truth Encounters. All you need to do is email Felicia, and your email will get you three really cool PDFs. One is a piece written by Felicia that is not in the printed book. One is a PDF from Paul, an essay titled Dear Ego. And one is an article written by Bradley titled Should We Use Love as a Name for God? So simply for emailing and entering, you're going to get all three of those PDFs, and you just might win a signed copy of the book. So with all of that said, let's get to the reason why we're here, which is to talk about the book. Felicia, you have given us poetry and prose straight from your heart, and we feel your heart when we read this book. So I wonder why this book at this time?
Mm, That's a really great question, Susan. I do think and is the way that we turn toward each other. It's the way that we hold space for one another in our journeys, no matter where we are, particularly in this time here in America, globally, with so many divisive opinions about how things should go and what things should look like. Um, I think and allows us to be both present to the truth of ourselves and extend grace and tenderness and mercy for everyone else as well. And so hopefully I my sound engineer today, I was doing some pickups for the audiobook, and my sound engineer today said, I've been thinking about that little simple word ever since your recording. And I've been using it. Like I found myself pausing and just stopping to consider not either or, but and this and this person and this point of view. And it's really changing me. And I think that if it is the gift that initiates change in us so that we can extend mercy and compassion to others, then it's for this time.
It's beautiful. Paul, Bradley, you've gotten to read the book. You both endorsed it. So I wonder, what would you say as you look at the world right now, the time that we're in? What about this book is speaking powerfully to you and you think will speak to us?
Timely is such a incredible understatement. I have not experienced this kind of polarization in my life, even as a child in the, in the last Cold War era. There was there were there was an us them thing that's happened, but it's so infectious now. It's so dangerous now. It's so ugly now. And and uh and I am seeing a stirring of appetite to move beyond that. But you can't move beyond that without, well, as we're going to see in one of the poems, facing your pain and deciding that my pain won't make me take a side, except with love. That's easier said than done these days, especially with the barrage of social media, and including when you get to see in, live on screen the kind of things being perpetrated. I on my days when I don't despair, I'm tempted more with hatred, and I'm like, and I realize, transcending that us them binary, it's going to need really wise guides. And so for a long time, Felicia has been one of my primary guides in this, and then even before her, Paul was. And it's very funny, or fun even, that I'm with the two of you today for this, because often, and I mean just about daily, when I'm writing anything on social media, I have you two on my shoulder sitting on the angel side, and I've internalized your voices and your hearts as into my conscience, and and like, and it gets me to, and what will love do? What will love say? And what, and we can talk about this later, but and love doesn't stay silent in the midst of oppression. But then my tendency would be to be so reactive to that that it only escalates the hatred. And so how on earth are we going to get through this? Well, I'm saying that Paul and Felicia are the kind of guides I have. One interesting note about the book, and is that it's not just a straightforward instruction manual on doing this. I don't know that's possible, because that would all go into my head, and this is not head stuff. So the reality that we get to hear your heart, Felicia, through your poetry, I think actually is essential. And so too with Paul's work, that I don't think there's some truths that I don't think we could have learned through nonfiction how-to books. We need the kind of narratives you bring to the table. So anyway, the fresh thing in this is, this friend of mine just today said, "What is this book about?" And I described it, and I said one of the key elements is in speaking into a polarized world is this poetic thing. And he goes, "There's still poets?" He's reading the poets from 100 years ago. Well, I think we need them to step forward now, and Felicia is.
That is so well said. And thank you for the honor of letting us sit on your shoulder. Hey, and who's on the other one? I didn't pick that up. No.
Oh, yeah. I've got a serious shadow guy over there.
That'd be John.
Oh, name John. This voice comes in. Name John. And so I agree with everything you're saying, and I love that you talked about how something other than nonfiction, because so much of the polarization comes through intellectual nonfiction. And you know, you just look at the history of the community of faith, and they kept dividing over single words. And lately I've been really buried inside of the distinction between the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. And that began, I think that this latest focus began with a conversation with Bradley, if I remember right. And
Yep.
yeah. So, and Bradley, you serve as a guide just as much as I might serve as one too. So this is the beautiful thing about people who move into an awareness of love and relationship, is that it suddenly bears fruit. And it's a fruit of constant invitation, right? So the title itself indicates the two trees, right? And so the and itself is more focused upward on the restorative power of love. And on the bottom, there's a separation, right? You can see it right in the way that the design of the cover is. And so my thinking has been, and it's in here, it's in the book all over the place, is that how you live your life is based on the tree you eat from.
Mhm.
And so at any point that you are proving that you're right instead of evidencing that you love, then you know what tree you're eating of.
Yeah.
If it's divisive, it's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And a simple question: do they need to know that you're right, or need to know that you love them, whoever that they is? And so, you know, another beautiful thing is that there is no tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the New Jerusalem, the city of God, to which we've already come, Hebrews. And only the tree of life, only the river of life, only the leaves and the fruit of those trees are for the healing of the nations. And so we're back to the restorative power of love in all situations versus the declaration of what's right and wrong. I mean, and this is right down to our immediate relationships. How often are we letting unwholesome words proceed from our mouths because it's evidence of the fact that we have declared what the right is and we're on that side? And so instead of, what if we all began to eat together of the tree of life, which is love and relationship? And this is all through this book. And, you know, pretty much every page is about this.
Yep.
And it's done in poetry, and it sneaks up on you, and it's not in chapter headings. And so,
Yeah.
you know, it's a constant invitation.
I have to say one more thing, just not just
Please.
the book, but the character of the author. So here's what happened to me this week. I got named in a national magazine in a misrepresentative way. So the first part A bunch of people needed to let me know that happened. I would have never even known about it. And I'm like, what are they trying to do? Did they want me to have a reaction? Do they want me to? And so I read it, and I'm like, okay, maybe I should respond. So I did the carefulest response. And then at the end of it, I ran it through the Felicia test. Literally, I'm like, Felicia's going to read this. Does it, have I achieved and here? I click send, and then about 10 minutes later, two things happen. I went, I don't think it does. And I deleted it. And the first person who texted me to encourage me about it was Felicia. And so I am a little verklempt right now. Just the character, the person who wrote this book walks the talk. You know, stuff I've written, I'm like, I don't know if I should be talking about this, but Felicia should be, and she should be singing about it, and she should be poeting about it. And I really feel like it's important that in these days, we couldn't have had, you can't have somebody who's a polarizer write this book. You have to have someone who has a track record in anding the world, and you really do. I just love you so much, and I know
Yeah.
Susan and Paul do too. And so thank you for encouraging me that day. It melted my heart. So
Yeah. One of the words that and replaces is but.
yeah, but
Yeah, but, and it erases everything that you've already said.
Mhm.
And now you're going to build your case for being right.
Anding. I loved that
Ending.
word,
Anding.
anding. Are we anding it?
Mm.
Well, let's move into one of the poems, shall we? Felicia, you're gonna read for us the author of the poet, the voice of the poet. This is, if anybody out there has your book already, this is on pages 27 and 28, and this is a reading that Bradley suggested for us. So,
I have to just say, before I do this reading, I'm sitting here smiling to myself because these two gentlemen are woven so deeply into my own healing story. Paul, like Brad said, through his fiction and introducing me to Papa, to a God who is love. And once I had intuited that and had that intimate relationship, I was looking for someone whose theology mimicked that. And I found that in Brad. And I think it was 2013 when I discovered the Gospel in Chairs on YouTube that Brad preached. So my heart is overflowing for this moment. So here's the reading that Brad chose. The thing is, we've got to feel the pain to heal it, and then we've got to heal. Pain demands we pick a side, but we don't have to. We can choose to side with love, and love sees fully. Love is inclusive of both the victim and the perpetrator. In our black and white, right or wrong, polarized society, we demand allegiances, and then we castigate or accept others based on their loyalty to their ideals instead of loving them for their humanity. We all have the potential within us to do depraved things, wretched man that I am. It doesn't mean our depraved actions define us. It means we need love to deliver us from evil. And sometimes that evil lurks within. When love transforms our heart, our actions align with the truth of our being, and we remember that which we already are, the very good of God's creation, created in the image and likeness of love.
beautiful. Maybe you could start us off with just a sense of where that came from in you.
Actually, it came from a meme. There was a meme that probably still floats around the internet that said Jesus sides with, and it's always telling us which side Jesus sides with, who Jesus sides with. And I realized that there's something in us that's always chasing certainty, that we find safety in certainty. And we need to know that we're on the right side. But that side is not either or, that side is love. And when we become acquainted intimately with love, the relationship being face to face with God in that way, love leads, love invites, love beckons, and it's dynamic and it's fluid. And what may seem like yes today may be no tomorrow. And so instead of having something that we make very unconsciously, it always invites us to the present moment, to be listening, to lean in, to have our hearts open, to be in communion and relationship, to have an exchange, an ongoing dialogue, you know? And that's life-giving. That's the dynamism of life. That's tree of life living, really. But when we are absent from ourselves, just tell us what to do. Just tell us which side is right, which side is wrong, and I will camp out on sides. And I think love is inviting us to life, and life is always going to be communal. So that's kind of where the poem sprang from.
Mhm. Yeah, I want to hear from Paul and Bradley, but the words you just said that really stuck out to me is when we are absent from ourselves. We're not living in love. We're not knowing and living in and from love. Yeah.
So
Gentle.
Bradley, why did you pick this poem?
I mean, because I hated it so much. No, no, I mean, because it both touched pain and brought healing to it. So, um, I could do an hour of commentary, so I won't, but I will. I just want to highlight a couple lines that hit me. Yeah, I mean, they hit me deeply. I know people who've done no worse things than me that are now treated as perpetrators, who are so bullied by advocates for the victims that they don't want to live anymore.
Mm.
And I care about them because wretched man that I am, right? I also know that I'm tired of trying to do inner healing work with victims because we could have prevented it by loving the perpetrators. And so I see an end to that I don't see in public these days. Both the right and the left, it just feels like there's no impulse for a redemptive path. And we've got to have a redemptive path. And we have a redemptive path. But when in the name of justice, we renounce love, and I'm seeing that happen more and more, the polarization, the castigation, the dehumanization increases. And I don't know, when Paul and I both have backstories where we know that we have the potential to do depraved things. And thankfully, we have the kind of friends and the timing, I suppose, of our violations that didn't end up having to define us. We know that love can transform us. It is transforming us. And when I pray the Lord's Prayer, just the one other thing, when I pray the Lord's Prayer, it's like, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. I think the order of that is absolutely about me. If I don't forgive as I've been forgiven, I am the evil one I need deliverance from. And so you were just kind of hitting on all the big points here. And then I just had to smile because I hear a little shout out to Paul in the line about aligning with the truth of our being. I just love that so much. So that's why I was drawn to this.
I hope Paul Young saw himself all through the
Oh
pages.
my gosh. It was so sweet and so tender and so kind. Yeah, it was like being with you, and to accompany you in the work that you were doing of writing this stuff. And man, I'm so honored by that. And Bradley, you and me, we're kind of a mess. The best kinds of messes, I think. And different from me, you're not really given to waves of tears. but you don't have a seizure disorder either. That's my advantage. And, but the tenderness of how you speak about this and the longing and the yearning that underlays that tenderness, it's like poetry. It is an art, but it's an art that the artist just expresses because that's who they are. The unveiling of the things that are wrong to reveal that which has been true and right the whole time.
So thank you, Felicia, for the medicine.
Yeah.
It was medicine. Yeah.
You're very
It's the
welcome.
Good Samaritan dumped me at the house of, you know, your
Felicia.
Felicia.
Brian Stevenson from Equal Justice Initiative says, "You are more than the worst thing you've ever done."
Mm.
And I remember volunteering for the opening of the museum in Montgomery, Alabama, and seeing that quote and being so struck by the truth of it. Because so many times our actions become our identity instead of just something we've done, right? And we are more than the worst thing we've ever done. And I think too of Audre Lorde, who said, "You cannot dismantle the master's house with the master's tools." And anytime that we as victims or even advocates of victims pick up the same bludgeoning axe to slay the perpetrator in the way in which the perpetrator harmed the victim, we are trying to use the master's tools. And that does not bring us to right alignment, which is all justice is really. When you think about, we're all writers on the page. You have justification of the margins, right? It's to when the old school typewriters, you would bring it back into right alignment, and that was to justify the page. And that's all love is inviting us into, is to see as love sees, about ourselves, about others, about the world around us. And we don't do that in camps on sides. We do that in love, seeing out and gazing through love's eyes.
The guys on death row have said that so many times to me. It's a horrible thing to be only known for the worst day of your life. And Emerson, the poet, says, every human being should be judged by the best day of their life, which I love too. And that reminds me of the Felicia quote that Bradley says, you've got to get that in somewhere. The freedom I value so much for myself is only as beautiful as the freedom I choose to extend to another. The freedom I value so much for myself is only as beautiful as the freedom I choose to extend to another. Come on.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, you want to push in a little further on this and bring up the challenge level. We could go to page 69, which Paul offered we might go to tonight. Because Felicia, you do not shrink back from confronting us. And it's from confronting us in love, with love. It's a beautiful thing. So I'd love to hear this when you're ready.
All too often, Christianity in white spaces is synonymous with politeness. Black people learn to go along to get along. They bite their tongue and clamp down on their rebuttals rather than ruffle feathers, make noise, or share their peace. They're opting to keep a false sense of peace rather than trouble the waters of kumbaya. Ask most white pastors of multi-ethnic churches, and they are likely to tell you race isn't an issue in their church. They've transcended. Ask most of the Black congregants out of the white pastor's presence, and they are likely to suggest a different narrative, one where they chose to say nothing about certain issues rather than rock the boat. one where they place the comfortability of a white church member over their own discomfort, rather than have to go through the struggle of finding another place to worship. Ask about how many microaggressions they've had to overlook or discount or write off just to rationalize in their minds attending church in a so-called peaceable kingdom.
Yeah, baby. That was so good. And, you know, it is the peacemakers, it is the ending people that get shot. Right? And I want you to speak to that a little bit, Felicia, because this is not an angry Black woman's book. This is not trying to right wrongs based on that which is right and wrong. This is a challenge for everybody, for everybody. And this little section, I'm so aware that this is all true. This is all true. Everything in this little page is all true. And I want you to talk about two things. One is help the white folk understand some of the microaggressions. And two, I want you to talk about how how careful were you in terms of writing this? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
You are totally trying to get me in trouble, Paul Young.
I totally am.
Trying to get me in trouble.
I'm trying to save your ass, just so you know.
Oh my gracious. Let's start at microaggressions.
Yeah.
The thing that I know, stepping back, is that most often, microaggressions are really not intentional. Sometimes it is people just trying to connect, but they do so through assumptions instead of curiosity. Okay. And so they take stereotypes from newsprint, from TV, from things they've heard or read or a fiction. And because they don't have deep relationships with people outside of their race, they assume that that's how all Black people are. And so they may say the darndest things. It could be something about your hair, or touching your hair. It could be, we had a church member, this is years ago, because our daughter she's in her 30s now, so I don't know if you're supposed to tell people's age at that place, but she went to Yale University. And we've had several church members come up and ask, how did that happen? How did she get into a school like that? What did she do? Who did she know? There are assumptions made about the ability to lead. There are assumptions made about you being able to sing, or being able to dance. There are assumptions made about attending an all-Black church, or that the pastor hoops. You know, my husband was a pastor for years and he has never hooped in his life. But the assumption is because he's a Black man that that's his style of hermeneutic, right, and delivery. I could really go on. There are little digs that feel like barbs, that most often Black people do not correct. They just let it go. There are, lots of projections and things. And so in doing this, I see this often too in spiritual companioning and when I'm doing spiritual direction and I am with people of color that attend white churches, and the burden of microaggressions and sometimes just over aggression that they carry, but they choose to stay I've experienced it myself, having attended most of my adult and multi-ethnic church spaces, adult life and multi-ethnic church spaces. As far as how careful I was, I am always careful. At the forefront of my mind is the fact that I care, and I am not trying to cause more division than already exists. And so I hold with great tenderness. My 5 closest friends are all white females. And so they are always before me, and me in my language and how I construct things, and not because we don't have a sense of honesty before us, we do, but I want them to be comfortable handing this to a relative who may not have the level of unconditional acceptance and freedom that they walk in. And so when I think, does my friend whose family is ultra conservative, how comfortable would she be handing them this book? And so there's a, let's write it, let's edit it, let's read it, let's let it sit with spirit, let's re-edit it if need be, but there's always some care to it. And it's not I'm withholding, it's just I care about you. I care about you. And because I care about you, I want to think about how I say, and I want to say it effectively enough that you can hear it and hear the truth of my heart in it, but also know that I'm not just trying to crush you under the weight of guilt and shame, because I think guilt and shame are detractors to empathy.
Mm. That
And
sounds like careful with 2 L's, you know, that your heart really, what an example though, too. It's like you can write a book that's polarized in the sense that you write to the audience that's on your side already. The very function of this book is to write for the relatives of your friends who are not necessarily there yet. I mean, you're ending even in this kind of carefulness, right? I appreciate that. There can be ungodly carefulness. I don't hear that here at all. I hear love. Yeah.
So the
yeah,
second
I'm
part,
not afraid. I don't want it to be from fear, right?
no,
But
no.
and I was using this example, I think with Susan, I have this visual image. I have 2 images that stay before me. One is of a waterfall, and that's how I see God. That's how I see love. I turn face to face to face, and I feel engulfed by the love in that, just wet in it. Let it flow to me, let it flow through me. I have that image. The other I have is my hands. And I can tell when I'm living like this, my fists are closed and they're clenched. And when I am this way, this is armored up. Nothing can get in, nothing can get out. If I open my hands too loosely, I am completely detached from it, but in a way that is not attentive. And so the way that I want to carry myself, my thoughts, my words, even the people and things that I love is like this, with cupped hands. So I want them to be open enough that whatever needs to flow through and flow off can, but also to be held like this is something tender and fragile and worth my care and, attention. And I think that's different from just a reckless kind of posture or a clenched posture. And so that's how I feel like I came to this, was like this, not through fear or any of that, but just, I care. I care about you. I care about these words.
Oh, beautiful. And I want to tell you a story about Jonathan Parker's daughter, Anna. And it's because of what you just talked about. And then I have a wrap-up question for this particular page. And that is, Anna, who was 10 at the time, not long ago, a couple months ago, if that. I asked a question on the panel discussion for Matthew that we've been doing at Open Table Conference. And I said, how come all the iconography shows the nail scars through Jesus' palms? right? And not through his wrists, because everybody was crucified through the wrist. And I got some answers, but they were about, well, that's the tradition of iconography, that kind of thing, which weren't sufficient for me, but I didn't follow up because it wasn't in the trail of the conversation. But I get a text message from Anna, who I didn't know, 10 years old. She's listening to the conversation. And she says, Paul, she got a picture of Jesus with blood flowing. She drew blood flowing from his side and from his palms. And she said, I think there's a scientific reason and a spiritual reason. She said the scientific reason is that he has to get nailed through the wrists because the hands can't hold it. So to hold him. The spiritual reason is because he wanted everybody to see that his hands were open and he hadn't got the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in his hands.
See,
10 years old?
10 years old, a child will lead them, right?
Yes.
No fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, only blood, death, resurrection, sacrifice, love, and relationship. Yeah? Yeah.
best
come on.
commentary I've ever heard on it. That's brilliant.
I totally agree. Best answer I've ever heard. And so the follow-up question is how careful did you have to think about your Black brothers and sisters in terms of how you wrote this?
That's really good. I think, and you know, my editor, one of the first questions she made the assumption that my audience was largely Black.
Wow.
And she made the assumption that I was writing to a Black audience. And I have a white editor. And so in our conversation back and forth, I said, actually, my world that I exist in is largely white. And so my audience is probably going to be more white people than it will be Black people. So to answer your question, it's not that I did not consider Black people. One thing that is common, you know, we Black people love to say, and it's very true, that Black people are not a monolith, that we all don't have the same journeys, the same experiences, but one thing is common. There is probably not, Candace Owens included, because that's her story from Connecticut, Black person in America that has not faced some type of microaggression.
Sure.
Right? And so whether we admit to them or not, we've encountered them.
Sure.
And so in writing, every Black person would see that as a mirror. I tell the story at the beginning of the book of an incident that happened in kindergarten with some twins
I remember.
that I was playing with. And last night, I had not read any of the reviews from the book very intentionally, but last night, to kind of posture my heart for the launch today, I sat and I read the reviews in Goodreads. And one of the reviews in Goodreads, one of the readers, and I've never ever known this story, tells the story of growing up in West Virginia and having a similar situation with triplet white friends when she was maybe 6 or 7 years old. And her review tells that. Now, that may have seemed like such an isolated incident for me, and it completely mirrored another Black woman's experience from her childhood. I'm in North Carolina, she's way in West Virginia, having very similar experiences. And there's not a state, and I think even with the migration, the Great Migration that happened, people left the South thinking that it would be better in the North. And they got to the North not realizing that the bankers in the North and the people who own the factories, they carried that same sense of racism in their heart and encountered just as much racism, sometimes in a different way, but just as much racism that they did in the South. And that's what they were trying to escape. Doug and I used to think of being expats, and we talked often about the idea of moving out of the country. And we travel quite broadly. And one of the worst, two of the worst damning racial experiences I've ever had happen to me was in Italy. When the first time Doug and I tried to enter the restaurant, they would not let us in. They yelled through the door that they were closed. And the VP of the company that I was with at the time, her and her husband were coming out and was like, "Oh, it's such a great restaurant. You'll enjoy your meal." And when Doug's hand grabbed the door, they yelled, "We're closed." And so we thought, "Oh, we'll come back for dinner." And we got all dressed up that night and we went back for dinner. And we went in, we sat down, and you could see a lot of back and forth, back and forth. It took over 20 minutes for someone to finally come to our table. Doug ordered a Coke. They brought him the Coke very hesitantly, and literally in our peripheral, they are now arguing because they do not want to serve us. And finally, Doug gets someone's attention, and he just says, "You know, if you bring me the check, I will pay for the drink and we'll go." And they go, "Oh, go, 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 go now." And we're in Italy and Rome. And then another thing in Paris, France as well. But so I said to Doug, "Is there any place that we can go where you don't experience the sting of the color of your skin? Where is that place? We know there's not that place in America, but is there that place globally?" And I would wager that the answer is probably no. So
Which brings up, yeah,
I did not have to, in that same way, kind of consider, because it's a very common issue that
okay.
people face.
I was thinking, and your example is perfect for what I was thinking about. And that is, there is a sense in which the victimized or the marginalized become, and this is a hard one, become the conduit of grace in the transformation, right? And it's not fair. It's just at its root not fair. But aren't you also calling an invitation to your community to stand in the ending place? Right? Which has got to be a hard thing. It's got to be it would be like asking a Jew in Germany to end, right? And it seems like it's a betrayal on the one hand of the Black community, because you're not willing to stand in the either or.
Yeah.
The
So that's
same
gotta
way
be,
that, the same way that Jesus would have been regarded as a betrayer by the zealots, right?
absolutely.
Don't tell us to turn the other cheek,
Yeah. I think for me, I get it. Like that propensity, I see my shadow very well too, Brad. I get the propensity for anger, right? I can find myself in it very well. And so I understand the picking up the stones, the harsh words, the cutting, the biting. I get it. But I also know, and I said this when 2016 happened, I had to turn off the news and stop reading the papers because I felt anger returning. And that was the thing that love transformed in me. I knew I could tell when I softened. I could tell when I changed. I knew it. I could tell. And I remember saying to Doug, I don't want to be, I no longer want to be friends with rage and violence in that way. I don't want to be angry again. And I could feel myself armoring up. I could feel it. And that was not the invitation from love, right? And so I also understand, like Brad was saying, this is not a journey of the head. You don't get here through head knowledge. You cannot read a book. And that's what we saw even after George Floyd was murdered. People give me whatever book so I can learn how to do this. But if you learn it here, you can unlearn it, right? That's not transformation. And this needs to be integrated and become a part of who you are when the truth of our being matches the way of our being. That's the way of love. And the truth of our being is that this way is in every single person. It's embodied in creation, it's embodied in humanity, this and. But we have to say yes and surrender to love, burning off everything that opposes love's kind, so that that which is true can rise to the surface and we can live it and be transformed by it.
Yeah, the heart has to be revealed so the mind can change, so the form can change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's something, particularly in Christianity, because we've been taught, at least in my Christianity, you slay the flesh, you deny the flesh, you kill the flesh, everything, the flesh was bad. Tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? The
Right.
flesh was bad and it was to be cut off. And so if we think the answer is to just cut off, then we won't even allow spirit to turn us towards ourselves to really see that which needs to be surrendered for change, submitted to love for change.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautifully said.
Mm.
I want to read the third one. And I
Awesome.
do. It's
Good.
in it's one of the most beautiful sections of the book, and it's all on motherhood. And you know, I was reading it to Kim, and she's like, well, this applies just as much to a man. And I'm going like, absolutely. In some ways, maybe more so because we're so estranged from our ability to have depth of relationship because we're so busy finding our identity in the ground and the works of our hands. And but I want to read this, and it's on page 242. Maybe it wasn't such a great idea.
Yes,
I'm
it
going.
is.
It is. I know it is. I know it is. But I'm going to struggle my way through it. And I love this. You know, I'm a father and now a grandfather, and I can see things so much better than I once did. I was blind to so much, you know. I didn't have the capacity to see so much. And that's what Bradley was talking about too. So here's how it goes. Sitting at the gas pump at Sam's Club, I watch the angry mama, the sullen child. I hear their angry words rise unbidden through the air. My insides twist. I remember being the child. And then, painfully, I remember being the mama, and I write. For all the days I fussed at my kids, I'm sorry. For all the times I didn't remove the scowl from my brow when I looked at you, I'm sorry. For every time I embarrassed you in front of your friends, I'm sorry. Sometimes the pain leaks and we don't know what to do with it, aren't equipped to hide it or heal it. All we know to do is transmit it, unaware of the damage it causes, the distance it creates. We perpetuate disconnection, participating with disillusionment. For the ways I fail to heal you, I'm sorry. For the ways my anger and violence created your brokenness, I'm sorry. If only it doesn't change the past, but I pray acknowledgement of my wrong will be the release you need to heal, to be. For every mama in pain, your kids see your eyes. They hear your scold. It feels like hate. It makes them question their existence. It sends them running to alternative forms of affirmation and approval. It's the seedbed of doubt. Heal, mamas. Love, mamas. Be honest about your pain, your past, and your wrongs, mamas. And most of all, mamas, let's ask forgiveness for the ways in which we've been complicit in fracturing our young. and then return. Return to love, return with love, return with an olive branch, return armed with forgiveness. No more harsh words, hard brows, back slaps and do-that's. Return with love and offer the gift of your whole healed self. What a beautiful confession.
Yeah, that's what I heard, a confession, you know. Someone said it's either easy to call someone out, it's a lot harder to call someone in, but a good place to start is with confession. Yeah. And it doesn't get more real than our damage we know we did to our kids in the hopes that they can be healed and beautiful, painful again, healing again, medicine. Maybe medicine, especially to parents with a lot of regrets. If they can just step into that poem. By the way, there's an audio book. To hear the book in your voice, I can't wait. But if you can't get someone, I suppose Paul could read it.
You know,
No,
I
you-
did not want to do the audiobook myself. And Doug and the kids were like, yes, it should be in your voice. We want it in your voice. So,
Totally, totally.
yeah.
I think being here tonight and hearing your voice now, even those who have the paperback, they're going to be able to hear the paperback in your voice now too. That's such a gift. That's one of the gifts of this night and the interviews you've been doing and will be doing. I can hear you say, I can hear you. Now others will be able to hear you with, even with, but they should probably get both anyway.
I'm really excited about the audiobook. That was a very, very beautiful experience. So I think it's, you know, sometimes your friends are your friends. So most of them are going to say really nice things anyway. So you're never quite sure if they're telling the truth about when they say it's good. But I walked into the studio and I had never met the recording engineer at all. And the 3 days of recording, you're spending 5-6 hour days recording. And he was so touched by the things that were shared. And after each time, he would just want to talk about it. And I could tell that he was being touched, and it meant so much to me. And then the last day, one of the things in the book is that's hopefully very noticeable is that I love art. And there's a lot of different references to art, artists, and things in that. And his father is a renowned artist, he passed away 3 years ago, but was a renowned artist here in Minnesota. And so on the last day, when I go in for my session, he says, I have something for you. And I said, oh, thank you. And he gave me a book that his dad had done before he passed away. And every page is just vibrant colors of artwork. And then his dad had written letters to his very first grandchild. And in it, he's essentially giving the family values and the heart of being human. And it's called Letters to Isabella. And it would be, Dear Isabella, when I painted this, I was thinking blah, blah, blah. And then he begins to teach her. And so I was telling Steve today when I went back to finish our pickups that I have sat with that book in the mornings with my morning coffee and just felt spirit inside of the movement of the colors and the wisdom of this artist to his grandchild and the love that comes forth from it. It was such a gift that he heard that through the recording and gave that to me at the end. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So, Felicia, you share so vulnerably and honestly through everything that you write in this book from your own story, sort of peeling back all the layers of fragmentation and the othering and the way that it affects us globally, socially, personally, in our families, with our kids. And so therefore generationally, you seem to come at all these levels with this deep invitation to healing that comes through love and anding, which is my new favorite word. And so I wonder, as you all look at the world right now, because it looks like it's on fire. Like, what is giving you hope right now as you sit with this book and you hear this call? Um, a lot of us are dreading this year ahead. So I wonder what might speak to hope for us tonight.
I'm not dreading this year at all.
Mm,
I got a daughter who's 2 days past her due date, right over in that house over there.
mhm.
And it's the children that give me hope. It's a book like this that gives me hope. It's being friends with Felicia and Bradley that give me hope. There is a wind of the Spirit. It is so right to grieve, and it's right to be angry. But it's never right to sin as a result of that anger. That anger needs to empower the love that will absolutely rip into the Pharisees and Sadducees for the hypocritical way that they've been living their lives. But that fury is a warning. It's a call. It's an invitation to turn when they wouldn't hear anything else. And but again, that fury occurs in the moment. It doesn't occur as, you don't wear it like a robe. You don't walk in fury. You're covered in love, and you get to respond. I'll tell you, I got a call about an hour and a half ago. I actually called my friend. And she's an elderly lady. She's in her 80s, just like low 80s. But she has started to befriend. There's a couple that parked their van outside the church 15 months ago. And the church didn't know what to do because they usually have a committee meeting for that, and at least to go to Guatemala. and so it began to change the church, because when it was a couple, a little bit older man with a little bit of a younger spouse, and when she invited him in for Christmas, he said, he's 52 at the time, and he said, "This is the first time I've been inside of a church in 40 years." And she just died last night. She just died last night. She had all these illnesses. And the hospital called him and said, "Is there any organ that you'd be willing to donate?" And he got mad. He said, "There is no organ in her body that would be of any use, except." And so at midnight last night, her corneas were transplanted into a 5-year-old little girl's eyes. And the other thing is that our friend, and Bradley and John know her, Felicia might even know her, but our friend said that she asked them about this one peculiarity that they had together as a husband and wife. And that is, they wore their wedding rings on their index fingers. And they did that because every time they pointed at each other, they would see their covenant love right on that finger. I've never heard anything like that, and they're houseless. They've been living in their vehicle you know, for the last few years. He could have been a serious musician, but the addictions got him. But in their love for each other, they have their wedding ring, the covenant, right on their pointer finger. And every time they point, they go, and this is the covenant, right? And they explained that to her. And I thought, when those little things are percolating all over the planet because Spirit is constantly making that invitation, I can grieve, I can get mad, but I don't trust those things. I trust love. I trust love. And that is what Felicia's book is all about.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Susan, is that I trust love. I will say very honestly that as a Black person, it is a scary time. It's scary. And it is a lot disheartening at times. And when I feel the weight of that, I hear Spirit's invitation. Can I trust love with you the way I trust love with me? I trust love with me. And I have seen the fruit of love transforming me, right? And it is a seal that's set on my heart. And because I know who I was and who I am now, I know that I know that I know, and that can never be taken away from me. But because I know that I know that I know that love changed me, I know that all that love touches, love changes. And if we say yes to the invitation, we all can be changed by love. And I trust love. I trust the perfect, organic, sometimes it seems very slow work of love. And that is my hope. It is my hope that, like Paul always says, you trust the ripples, the stories that he's telling, the feeling that people have that we have to turn toward, we have to return to our humanity, we need to heal ourselves. This is just love. This is love beckoning. This is love's invitation. And so I'm trusting the work of love. And when I start tipping into despair, I turn my face back to that image of the waterfall and I sit face to face to face and I let love empty the fullness of love's truth and promise and beauty and goodness into me so that what I see is not the character defects, because I don't want to move and live and have my being by the character defects. I want to move and live and have my being by the truth of the good that we all are. Child of God, child of God, child of God. You are good. You are very good. You are very good. And I want to call us in to the truth of who we are. And that's where my hope lies.
The waterfall is not a mirror.
I'll just say something quickly. What I noticed about both of your responses, which, I echo. But what I notice is that hope is a fruit. And so just to use a quick analogy, in Matthew 5, Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers. They'll be called children of God. James knows that we're going to one day just start trying to create the fruit of peace by sowing violence, exclusion, hatred. And this will somehow bring about the fruit of peace. And he's like, it doesn't work that way. Peacemaker is one who sows peace. And that's what reaps a harvest of justice. It's a sowing. Likewise, with hope, I think we can try to squeeze hope. You will not squeeze hope out of the news or the internet or social media. You will not wring hope out of that. It will be the fruit of sowing love and receiving God's sowing love into us. So yeah, so the receiving of God sows the love in at the waterfall, out comes hope. We sow love into the world, out comes hope. And I think it's really important to know that, because if you grasp for hope, you won't find it. If you open your hands to love and then open your hands to love, that's what's going to come. I should mention a question from the Q&A. It's sort of what I do. What's the preferred platform for people to buy your book?
Whitaker House would probably say Amazon.
Okay. Okay.
I'm
'Cause
laughing because Susan and I have had this conversation.
Yeah.
I am a huge supporter of independent bookstores. And so, and I also believe in choice. So I will mention my publisher's preference, which would be Amazon. And I understand the reason for that. And I'll also mention bookshop.org to support local independent booksellers. So people can really choose. But I know that Amazon helps what Whitaker House needs. So.
Yeah, and if they go to their local bookstore, that those bookstores can order it from Whitaker House as well. But yeah, okay, good to
Yeah.
know. Some people care about what you want us to do. So
Yes. And I'm going to ask, that's a perfect lead in, because I'm going to ask everybody who hasn't yet ordered the book to go order the book right now from your chosen provider. And I want to encourage you, when you buy the book, to go back and write a review of the book, because reviews really do matter.
both on the book website and on Goodreads.
Yes. Yep. And a review is a sentence and a rating. So it's super simple. It's not a long, involved process, but it's something that you can do to help sow some love into the world and to help others find this beautiful book. I want to encourage you to follow Felicia on all of her socials, because her voice is an important voice. And I promise that everything that you find in the book, you'll find in her social feeds as well. And if you go, Felicia, do you want to tell people the best way for them to find you in the world?
Sure. My website is FeliciaMurrell.com, Murrell. And I am on Instagram at HelloFelicia_Murrell. And then you can follow me on Facebook as well, which is generally where I am on social media. So.
Awesome. Thank you. So we're going to close our time tonight. Felicia is going to bring her voice once again and close our time together tonight with a benediction from And.
I will. I did notice there was a question about Vancouver. I love to travel. So if anyone wants to invite me to Vancouver, I will come to Vancouver. Very, very gladly to do that. And I don't think there was any other questions. Were there? Okay.
I think we covered them. Yep.
Okay, fantastic. There is in every person an inward sea. And in that sea, there is an island. And on that island, there is an altar. And standing guard before that altar is the angel with the flaming sword. Nothing can get by that angel to be placed upon that altar unless it has the mark of your inner authority. Nothing passes the angel with the flaming sword to be placed upon your altar unless it be a part of the fluid area of your consent. This is your crucial link with the eternal. Be kind, dear world. To yourself and to others, be kind. While we push and prod and force our way into power and prestige, our hearts are crying for the tender, compassionate touch of the feminine. When the scales shift too far into a patriarchal land, the use of excessive violence explodes. Let the feminine grace within remind you to be soft when life says muscle up and be hard. Return to the center, dear one. Be centered, beloved. It's not one or the other. It's both and. And the unforced rhythms of grace. And the bridge to our return. And the thread of love that binds us to one another and to the world. And peace be with you. Ashe.
Amen.
Amen.
And
That should do the trick.
I think it just did.
Beautiful.
Thank you all again
Unforced
so
rhythms.
very, very much for joining me, for being a part of this, for all that you've done. Yeah, my heart is full. Thank you.
Me too.
Very good.